Hello friends, today we are going to discuss one about the important topic in genetics about pedigree analysis. You know, pedigree analysis. Pedigree analysis consists of a pedigree chart that displays or projects a family tree that shows how a genetic disorder affects the members of the family, simply called inheritance of a genetic trait. Say, ultra how it ends, okay? Say, for example, we'll take particular example. Say, there is a family chart that shows how the color blindness trait will inherit it. That means would inherit it amongst the members of the family, okay? And simultaneously we'll discuss how to draw a pedigree chart like that. Say the first, a female will be represented by a spherical structure. Then the male. Red lines depicts affected. And black represents normal. It's a simple representation of a pedigree chart with respect to a color blindness trait. Here we are taking the example of color blindness trait. That means, since I told you already, it shows how a particular trait has been inheriting or how the members of the family has been affected by a particular genetic disorder. All we can study in a pedigree chart. Okay. And the first thing is the first couple. That means it means if the round structure as I have already discussed, the female and the male will be represented by a square box. Okay. The horizontal line comes between the two is mating. That means they are couple and they are considered as generation 1. What we call founding parents, they are called founding parents. Okay. Then here red line indicates affected. That means the affected father, affected colorblind father, okay, have 2 daughters. That means this couple have 2 daughters and they are called as generation 2. And they are founding children. They are called founding children. And the entire structure up to this, that means the 2 daughters and a couple are considered as founding family. Considered as founding family. Okay. They have 2 daughters and both are affected. Okay. So simply, the spherical structure means daughters. That means a female simply. Square means male. Red represents affected. Okay. Then after this, one of the two daughters, that means both daughters are affected with color blind, and one daughter married with a normal person from outside. And these are second generation. This is the first generation, the second generation, and this is the third generation, and these are fourth generation. Okay. First, second, third, and fourth. And this affected second daughter, that means one of the daughter, marries with a normal person, that means from outside the pedigree, and they got 2 kids, one affected son and normal, that means unaffected daughter. And this affected colorblind son marries to a normal woman and they have unaffected kid. Here I told you, color blindness. In previous classes we have discussed about color blindness. That means here the inheritance of a particular trait, say color blindness or hemophilia, from grandfather to grandson through a carrier female of the first generation. That means the F1 generation. Okay. That means here the thing is same concept. Here it is a grandfather, the same has been to grandson to the carrier of the first generation. So that means the carrier female. That is called, here carrier daughter. Okay. the daughter inherits the colorblindness trait to that of the son. That means the grandfather to grandson is a colorblindness. That means it is a typical representation of a pedigree chart. Say the female, the male, the couple, the vertical line represents that they are the children. Say the two daughters, affected colorblind daughter belong to this family. That means this couple, and the entire thing is considered as founding family, and the generation 1, 2, 3, 4. You got numbers, you can represent as digits like 1, 2. This is 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 1. In the sense, say if one asks us how many coupling parents, how many mating parents are there, say how to say like that. Mating parents simply means the first generation 1 and 1, 2. Then in the second generation 2, 2 and 2, 3. That means the Roman numbers represent the generation like 1, 2, 3, 4, and the digits 1, 2, 3 are represent the members within the generation. Okay. Then the third generation we have third 2 and third 3. So it's about this how we represent a particular pedigree structure. That means about basics, okay, members and children and avoiding the founding generation issues. Okay. Then there are certain key assumptions that we have to learn in analyzing the pedigree chart. In the sense, what we call keys, the most important assumptions, what we call, which are helpful in understanding or in reasoning out a pedigree chart. Say for instance, we have discussed in our previous classes that about X-linked inheritance. X-linked inheritance means during that concept we have discussed that Y chromosome always transfer from father to son, and males are hemizygous with respect to X and Y chromosome. That means one copy of a single allele copy is required for its phenotypic expression. Doesn't matter whether it's dominant or recessive allele. Like that, there are certain keys in understanding what we call general assumption and simple assumptions and keys for identifying. That means what we call analysis of pedigree. The general assumption is the first most assumption, inheritance pattern. We would like to just first assumption, what we call primary assumption, inheritance pattern, whether it is through dominant allele or the recessive allele. What we call general assumptions. The first general assumption is inheritance pattern. Whether it is by dominant or recessive. This is the general assumption that we first look on the pedigree chart. Then the specific assumptions we have. Specific assumptions. The first specific assumption is called complete penetrable. Complete penetration or penetrable. It means that an individual shall get affected if he or she contains one dominant allele if it is a dominant trait, or two recessive alleles if it is a recessive trait. That means complete penetration means the affected individual either may be a dominant, that means either trait may be a dominant trait or the recessive trait. If it is dominant, it contains one allele. If it is recessive, it contains two alleles. We have discussed for a dominant trait expression, one allele is enough. So the first, that means if an individual in the pedigree chart got affected, it may be either dominant or recessive. The second, rare in the population. Rare in population. Rare in population means we have to assume, this assumption is very important. Say some members will get into the pedigree, that means in the family chart, through marriage link. Say a members getting into the pedigree chart in second and third generation. In second and third generations will never they are carriers. They never become carriers. That means founding parents, they may become carriers, but the one who are getting into the pedigree, through marriage link in second and third generation, they can never be carrier. That means they doesn't contain a disease allele. This is very important. And no Y link. The third one is specific assumption. No Y link. Y link in the sense we have discussed already. The objective of pedigree chart is, we would like to ascertain whether the allele is dominant or recessive. Then number 2, linkage, whether it is autosomal or X linkage, but not Y linkage. Here pedigree analysis will study only about autosomal and X linkage. Simply X linkage. Autosomal again may be dominant and recessive. The same concept here, dominant and recessive, but we're not going to study about Y links in case of pedigrees. That means these are the 3 specific assumptions that we have to keep it in our mind before we analyze. And there's something called clues, what we call 5 important clues. Here, the first important clue means an unaffected individual doesn't contain even one particular allele for dominant allele. That means dominant trait, because one copy of dominant allele is enough for its expression, and individual is unaffected in the sense it doesn't contain any dominant allele. No dominant allele. No dominant allele in unaffected individual. This is very important. No dominant allele in the unaffected individual. The second important point is unaffected individual may be carrier. The sense we have already discussed in previous classes. Carriers means the one recessive allele may be, they may contain one recessive allele, which may get inherited in the next generation. Here unaffected in the sense, first absolute point is they doesn't contain any dominant allele. The second point is they may become carriers. And the third is, we want to discuss the rare in the population. Individuals getting into the family through marriage links are not carriers. That means outside links, outside members are not carriers. This is very important. What's called rare in the population. Okay. The most important point is, just one copy is required for phenotypic expression in male because of his hemizygous condition. We already discussed. Males, one copy because of males, hemizygous condition. It doesn't matter whether it is recessive or dominant. Say we have discussed color blindness, actually a recessive, X-linked recessive trait. In order to get expressed in female, 2 copies are required, but in male just 1 copy is required, because in male just 1 copy of X chromosome is present. So just because of his hemizygous nature, just 1 copy is required. Then, and the most important, the 5th point is, father always inherit Y chromosome to the son, whereas X chromosome to the daughters. But mother always transfer its X chromosomes to both son and daughters. Here the point is simple. That means the father will inherit his X chromosome to daughters, whereas mother inherit X chromosome to both daughters and son. Say simple representation: father to daughters the X chromosome, whereas mother to both son and daughter X chromosome. So these are the 5 clues. Before we analyze the pedigree chart, we have to understand these issues. Say the most important, the rare in the population, because the trait in question is rare in population. The members which are getting the family through marriage links are never be carriers. But the founding parents can be carriers. And other issues like no Y link, and an unaffected individual doesn't contain a dominant allele, but he or she may be a carrier. At the same time, males, because of hemizygous 1 copy is required, whereas for father transfer X chromosome to daughters, whereas mother transfer to both daughters and sons. So it's about the general assumption, the specific assumptions, and the important clues. These are very, very important in identifying, that we analyzing pedigrees. Okay, let me take one different patterns of pedigree analysis. These are very important. We discuss about the same. Patterns of pedigree. Patterns of inheritance in a pedigree. Inheritance in a pedigree. Here there are two kinds of inheritance, recessive, we are discussed, then dominant. In recessive again we have autosomal recessive, then X-linked recessive. In dominant we have autosomal dominant, then X-linked dominant. These are different patterns, important patterns, okay? One recessive pattern and dominant pattern. In recessive again autosomal recessive, X-linked recessive. In dominant again autosomal dominant and X-linked dominant. Then first we will study one by one, okay? First recessive, that means what is the general pattern of inheritance in recessive? Say for instance, these are a couple, that means a mating parents, and they may have either this or this, or this. Here, the most important patterns of recessive patterns in pedigree. Here, the affected individuals have, in recessive pattern, the fundamental principle, the affected individuals have unaffected parents, but when both parents are unaffected. So you can see, is a affected individual, both parents are unaffected. Affected, both parents are unaffected. Affected, both parents are unaffected. This is a general pattern. Why? For example, why it cannot be a dominant? I told you already. One copy of dominant allele is required for its acquisition. If the parents contain a dominant allele, they may get affected. Since they are unaffected, we are not talking about the carrier nature. Since they are unaffected, the absolute pattern of inheritance will be recessive. That means if parents are unaffected and if the kids are affected, then the pattern is recessive. This is very important. Then we will take one particular example. Say autosomal recessive. Autosomal. It's the same concept here. Autosomal recessive. In autosomal recessive, the founding here they are considered as the founding kids. Say the founding daughter. The founding daughter have that means have unaffected parents, and the kind of inheritance, the possible, that means what we call must be inheritance is autosomal recessive. Autosomal recessive. So the second question I mentioned, why it cannot be X-linked recessive? X-linked recessive, if it is present in the male, he get affected, because we already discussed here, because the female is aggressive. So the only possible nature is autosomal recessive. If the founding individual, that means the kid is a founding daughter and the parents are unaffected, then the kind of inheritance should be autosomal recessive. Then take another example. What if the kid is male, that means founding son? Here we cannot come to a conclusion like autosomal recessive, just like in daughter. It may be autosomal recessive, it may be autosomal recessive, at the same time X-linked recessive. Because we all discussed, from father to son only Y chromosome will get transferred. So either both parents may contain the recessive alleles and the same may get inherited to the one, that means to the founding son. So then it becomes autosomal recessive. That means we cannot absolutely determine as autosomal recessive, just like here. It may be autosomal recessive. At the same time, it may be X-linked recessive. Here, the parent, the female parent can inherit to that of the the founding son, because we already discussed hemizygous condition. just one copy is required. Say the mother contains X-linked recessive allele and the same have been inherited to her son, then he got affected just because of homozygous condition. So in this case, that means second case, we cannot determine like absolutely like autosomal recessive or X-linked recessive. They may be both autosomal recessive from both parents or X-linked recessive from mother. Okay. Then third case, what we call X-linked recessive. Here the thing is, the concept is said just like we have studied in the skip generation of inheritance. Say an affected son have an unaffected parents, and how he got affected? Through her mother. That means what we call skip generation of inheritance. From grandfather, that means inheritance of a particular trait, say color blindness, from grandfather to grandson through a carrier of the first generation. That means that to her mother. Her mother is a carrier. Then in that case also, that means the founding son, the kind of inheritance patterns here, he will be X-linked recessive. X-linked recessive. So there are three patterns of recessive. Autosomal recessive, we can come to a conclusion when the founding daughter have unaffected parents, and both, if the founding individual, that means the kid is son, may both possible autosomal recessive and X-linked recessive. Here third case, X-linked recessive pattern if it follows skip generation of inheritance. Okay. Then the second pattern is dominance. This is about autosomal recessive and X-linked recessive. Dominance pattern. In case of dominance, say for instance the same concept here. Affected mother will have an affected son. There are two possibilities, just like here also. Either this or this. This case 1 and 2. That means two patterns here. Here, this they are called non-founding parents. They are non-founding parents. Okay, and these are the offspring. Here, the thing is, in previous case, in X-linked recessive, we have discussed in the third case. Okay, in previous case, the father will be from outside. So he doesn't have a role, but here the same case, but mother from outside, and he doesn't have any role. That means she doesn't have any role. In the sense, if the affected individuals, that means if the affected kids have, that means coming from non-founding parents, wherein one of the parent is affected, then such kind of inheritance is dominant inheritance. That means simple concept. Affected individuals of non-founding parents has one affected parents. Affected individuals have non-founding parents has one affected parents. Such kind of inheritance should be dominant. The first thing is, it is not recessive, dominant. We have to sort out first whether it is recessive or dominant. So dominant, then whether it is autosomal or X-linked. Likewise, we have to analyze based on the keys and assumptions. So first we got the first question. It is dominance. Why it is not recessive? Because we have discussed two copies are required, but here one copy is required in case of dominance. The affected individual of non-founding parents have one of the affected parents. Say here father, here mother is from outside. Say affected father leads to affected son, and affected father leads to affected daughter. Just one copy is enough. So that just one copy, it is absolutely dominant trait. Okay. Again, whether it is autosomal, the second question, the autosomal or X-linked dominant. Okay. Take the same example, say, just like in case of previous case, here the son, say for example, affected son, here the mother is from outside, affected son get inherited from affected father. Here it cannot be X-linked. The first question, whether it is X-linked dominant or autosomal dominant. The first question is, it cannot be X-linked dominant. The first answer to the first question, it cannot be X-linked dominant, because From father, only Y chromosome will get inherited. Therefore, it should be autosomal dominant. Here in this case, it should be autosomal dominant. The point is simple. Father leads to son through Y chromosome. Here, no possibility of X linked. Therefore, it should be autosomal dominant. The simple question. However, daughter, whether we come to such conclusion like just like here, like absolutely no, we cannot, because we have already discussed X chromosome from father and mother will inherit to daughter. So there is both possibility, autosomal dominant and or X linked dominant. This is both possibility. Either the for example the father may inherit. Here you just ignore the mother because she is unaffected. Okay, just look at about the father. Either he can transfer and inherit an autosomal dominant trait or an X-linked trait. So both possibilities, autosomal dominant, at the same time X-linked dominant, respect to father. Okay, X-linked dominant, and mother doesn't have any role because she is from outside. So we cannot come to a conclusion that just like here, like autosomal dominant. If autosomal dominant, if the son is, if the affected individual is son, if the affected individual is daughter, that means from non-founding parents, we cannot come. As it may be autosomal dominant, the affected father may inherit an autosomal dominant trait or X-linked dominant trait. It's about, these are the 5 important patterns in pedigree analysis. So one should understand whether it is recessive or dominant. The first important segregation, whether it is recessive or dominant. In recessive, the first fundamental key is both the parents of an affected individual will remain unaffected. If it is dominant, one of the parents will get affected. That's like here. Then if it is after sorting mode, as it is recessive, we have to sort whether it is X-linked recessive or autosomal recessive. Then if it is dominant, we have to sort whether it is autosomal dominant or X-linked dominant. For example, here the affected son will have autosomal dominant inheritance, but we cannot come to such conclusion as a daughter. It may be autosomal or X-linked. Why? Because in case of father to son, the only mode of inheritance is Y chromosome. So the only possible option is autosomal dominant. Likewise, I have already given certain clues now. Clues, that means the first general assumption, the point whether it is dominant or recessive pattern. Then the specific assumptions, like complete penetration and the rare population and no viling, and specific clues like what we call an unaffected individual doesn't contain a dominant allele but he may be carrier, like the hemizygous condition and all this. So this is about pedigree analysis. I have already discussed. Pedigree chart gives us an idea about how, that means the members of the family have been affected by a disorder. That means how the inheritance of a specific allele among the family members. So it's about pedigree analysis. Okay. In last class, we have discussed about X-linked dominant. Sorry, X-linked recessive characters. We have discussed about X-linked recessive. That means during sex-linked inheritance, we have discussed about X-linked recessive characters and X-linked dominant characters as well. But there are certain important things under this head, like sex-limited genes. Sex-limited genes. That means sex-limited inheritance. Sex-linked inheritance means here, in contrast to X-linked inheritance, there are other phenotypic expressions whose expression is also depends on the sex, but not because that their genes are located on the X chromosomes. That means in X-linked inheritance, we have discussed that depending on the kind of sex, the inheritance pattern will be because of male hemizygous condition. But here there are certain other inheritance characters, that means certain other traits which follow this trend. Not just because that the genes are present on the X chromosome, but because of other, if you say, what we call sex-limited genes. They are nothing but the autosomal genes, and they are restricted to one specific trait and sex. That means that specific traits to specific sexes. Say for example, beard development in man, breast development in women, and milk secretion in women. They are all sex-limited genes. That means sex-limited characters. Sex-limited. In case of man, it is beard in man. At the same time, breast in female. In females. These are sex-limited genes. And why there is such kind of specificity? because of internal hormonal environment. Because of internal hormonal environment, they have, that means specific traits are restricted to one particular sex, just like beard in man, breast in females, and male secretion females. Here they are autosomal genes. This is very important. Sex-linked genes are autosomal genes. Okay. Just like sex-linked inheritance, there is sex-influenced inheritance. We have another pattern. Sex-influenced inheritance. Here, sex-linked inheritance, that means sex-influenced genes, they are also autosomal genes, but they behave differently in different sexes. One particular sex, maybe they are dominant, in other sexes they may be recessive. For example, pattern baldness, the most classical example for sex-influenced characters or inheritance is pattern baldness. The pattern baldness gene, allele for pattern baldness, is dominant, that means capital B in male, whereas recessive, small b in case of females, because of sexual environment, that means because of influence of sexual hormones. Though they are just like sex-linked genes, they are also autosomal genes. They are also autosomal genes. Because of sexual and hormone influence,